And we're good to go. Okay, welcome everyone to what is our quarterly Smarter SMSF update, where we take a look, as I said, what has been happening across the Smarter SMSF business over the past quarter. And it provides you with an opportunity to see what we're working on, where our roadmap is, fixes, enhancements, all those things, so that you can go, well, actually, that's going to help me in my business. And rather than kind of just giving monthly releases, we find that this sort of succinct way in which we deliver this webinar enables you to come in and go back to those particular items that we'll be exploring throughout today. So we've got a pretty consistent agenda that will run now around these particular topics, where we'll discuss our platform enhancements. We'll recognize where there are some material bug fixes. We'll let you know what we've done in respect to those particular areas. We'll touch on our integrations. So where we've either upgraded integrations, created new integrations, and what they mean for you. We'll touch on new documents that we've added or changes that we've made to documents and why. We'll explore our SMSF Day online course, which we now have available, and finish off with a bit of a roadmap and any questions and so forth that you may have off the back of today's session. So let's get stuck straight into it. So there has been a range of things over the past 3 months that we've had as projects for some time, but we now are excited to bring them to life. So in terms of what we have been focusing on as a business, there are a few things. One of those has been some changes around our company incorporations process, and also then the generation of constitutions. So our API provider, which we currently use, InfoTrack, did require a fairly dramatic overhaul of the API that they were utilizing with their API partners such as us. So we actually had to go through and do some fairly substantial changes to that process. One of the things that we are taking the opportunity to do as part of this change is we are going to take some control of that process. And what I mean by that is currently we do what we call an API call, and then the information we bring back into our system. So historically, we've given them some of the templates and information to enable the generation of the documents that we want to provide you through that company incorporation process. Naturally, we're tapping into the API there to be able to do that incorporation and get your ASIC certificate and so forth. One of the things, given the regularity of change that we're seeing with different documents, in particular, we think about constitutions is a really good example here. We are now bringing some of that back in-house. So in essence, there is a process that we'll be going through. It won't have any impact on the delivery of the documentation to you, but it has resulted in a couple of little issues that we've had over the past month or so that we will touch on in a bit more detail on the next page around bug fixes. But we are working through a number of these things at the moment. So things might look a little different. They might come out the same. You might not even notice it, but I just wanted to make you aware that that change has been occurring and will continue to evolve over the next month or so. We are really excited about these next 2 releases. The first one is the release of our ABN TFN integration, and I'll go into that in a lot more detail shortly, as we are excited about our SuperMate integration. So we are one of very few now that has a fully dedicated brand agnostic platform to be able to do your document generation. We know firms that even have multiple products to deal with multiple service offerings that they have in the marketplace, enabling you to now use BGL, Class, and SuperMate to order a range of documents. And again, we'll touch on some of that. We've been working fairly extensively with BGL around an enhanced API to enable our pension commencements to be even better than what they are. And I'm going to touch on that in a little bit more detail. We've not only enhanced our pension commencement form, we've actually now worked with BGL to be able to get more information to populate that document order. And if you have multiple pensions set up in a year, you'll be able to import all of those pensions and then go through and complete those documents via the Smarter SMSF platform. And as I said, we've just gone through and successfully completed across 5 capital cities around Australia our SMSF Day events. And one of the things that both Tim Miller and myself have been working on over the past few weeks is moving that from a face-to-face concept into an online course. And again, I'll show you just a little bit of what we've done in that regard. So as I touched on before, from the things that we've kind of had to go out and look at and address and squash from a bug fixes point of view, that company orders, we do know we've had a number of tickets around this. I've explained now why that has occurred, and we have, I guess, put some alerts on our particular company order pages to let people know that if you do have an issue, to naturally log a ticket with us to enable us to look at that process as well. And we're hoping that the changes, once they've been bedded down, will deliver a better outcome than what we do see. We're seeing a fairly substantial increase in the number of companies that are being ordered via the site. So it just gives us a really good opportunity to have a close look at where we're at, given that the company orders were something that I think it was in the top 3 or 4 first documents that we got on our platform. And the tech then, in theory, hasn't really changed since the sort of 2018 period. So it's been working and going great, but there has been some changes, and therefore it's an opportunity for us to look into that a little bit further. We're continuing to work through, for those that have subscriptions, we've got our counters, so what we call our primary and secondary user functionality. If you are a member and your company is the one that has multiple team members that are using that subscription, we have an entire user reporting or user console that enables you to track, monitor, pass that information, view saved orders, completed orders, and that of the entire team. So you can have a parent or multiple parents that would have access to that. And as part of that process, we have a migration, again, from our counters of what was the subscriber into the entity. So again, we are running those things in parallel for the best part of 6 months. So again, we are continuing to come up with little issues that we need to address. I guess it is still front and center of us to get that finalized as well. There's been no other major issues. There's a couple of little template fixes and updates and that sort of thing as well. We've released recently our changes to directors. And so we get feedback from clients, I think most importantly, around how the documents might generate, or a combination that maybe we haven't thought of. And those sorts of things, I guess, the more that you give us the opportunity to look at those and understand the potential impact of those, we can then see how we might tailor those different documents into the future. Now, from an ABN integration point of view, like I said, this is very exciting for us. It's our most requested feature and has been for a couple of years. We sort of started it down one path, and then we've sort of redeployed resources in a different way. And anyway, the short answer is we are now here at the point where this will move to live production from next week. We've gone through a beta testing phase, made the adjustments that we've needed to make, and post Anzac Day, this will move to live. What you can see on the screen here is that it is a process that will be able to be enacted through the completion of a new SMSF. And therefore, we'll talk about the role of the Constitution when you order a company into the new SMSF and thereafter. So from the Actions tab within the Completed Orders screen, you'll now be able to apply for the ABN TFN via the API. So this is an API-driven lodgement to the Australian Business Register. Importantly, the data that you have completed in the new SMSF order form will pre-populate that ABN application. And we have also gone and completed a number of the questions within the ATO's form, or the ABR form, that we know will establish it as a self-managed super fund. So we're fast tracking this process around the registration when you compare it to the way in which you do it on the Australian Business Register. And the feedback that we've had from our beta testers has been fantastic and a definite time saver in that process. Now, 2 quick things here to note. The first is, as the associated contact, if you're the agent that is lodging this on behalf of the fund, which is the natural occurrence here, the first time that you will complete that order, you will need to add in yourself as the associated contact, the individual, the firm, the agent number, those sorts of things. But once that information has been entered for the first time, we will then store that as a contact record in the system that will mean you don't need to populate that information again for future entries. That's a really important further time saving that we wanted to introduce. Doesn't mean you have to use that same contact each and every time, but each time that you do add a new contact, it will store that entry for a future time in which you will want to, again, complete an ABN or TFN. And what I should also note is if you do have existing processes around the way in which you complete orders, so you might have different staff doing different things, the same functionality that we already have within our SMSF document ordering system applies here. So what I mean by that is prior to the submission of the order, you can save that order. And if that is being done by a particular staff member, if under a membership, someone is that primary contact, they will be able to go in and review and then have that information submitted. Equally, we could revert, we are looking to reverse engineer that process. One of our members has said they want to see the process from the company to the new SMSF. Once they're happy that that process has been done, they would like to then assign the ABN process back to that individual. So we are building that type of functionality into the process as we speak. So as I said, this is done via API. So this is all lodged through the standard business, ATO standard business reporting. And then there is a response that is provided that issues the ABN or a reference number if the ABN is not issued. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you over now to the website, and I'm going to show you via this Help Scout guide that we've built. So you can see here in a little bit more detail that we now have the ability for you to go through this process. So you can see on our documents page, you've got your completed orders. Under the new SMSF, you now have an action. That action allows you to apply for a TFN. The ABN then opens up the registration form, and you can see in here, this information from the fund establishment form is then already pre-populating. So it is picking up names, trustees, addresses, members, all that sort of stuff. So the time we know, things like associates and associated contacts does take a significant amount of time in that ABN process. This simply fast tracks that. So you can go through, you can save the order, as you can see here, and then you will get a message that the application has been submitted, like you do with any other document. Now, the important part here is if you are saving the order, you'd be able to resume that at any point in time. So if you don't have all the information there, the authorized contact, you can see here, is where I said before, once you have utilized this for the first time, that entry will be stored to be able to use for subsequent. And that's where that drop menu on the right-hand side there is relevant. Okay, so the associate information we have in here, our disclosure information that we would need to complete based upon corporate or individual trustees. And then we have our declaration. And again, the declaration information, if it's being done by you as the agent, i.e. being the intermediary, that information will be stored based upon the entries that have been done historically. So we then get our declaration. As you can see, you can review the data on the page. You will also get sent to you, as you do with any order, a detailed summary of the information that you have completed in the form. You'll need to then, at that point, pay for it. I'll come back to pricing in a second. And then you will place the order. And then once that has been submitted, there is either going to be a finished, which means that it has been successfully lodged. And if it has been successfully lodged, we will generate the following document for you. So what we will get as a response message is we will get the ABN. So instantaneously, once that ABN has been issued, you will be able to go through your tax agent portal or super fund lookup to check that information online, and you'll be able to see where that has been issued that is available to then use. We will then naturally capture the entity, we will capture the date of the registration, and we will capture a document number. That document number is important because it's then the reference. If you need to go back and follow anything up, you will then be able to utilize that reference in contact with the business register. Now, what we do note here, this is just a document that we have created. We then will tell you through this process that the ATO is naturally going to send you this documentation. So you will then expect the notice that the fund is a complying super fund, the evidential document you may need to be able to do certain things. You'll get your tax file number and your ABN advice letter, even though you will be issued the ABN on the spot. Okay, so that is an important document just to confirm that you've got all that. It's not the official document as such because it is generated by us, but you can go and check at any time once you've got that document to see that it's gone through appropriately, because you'd be able to go straight to Superfund Lookup to be able to find that as well. So it's naturally in this process, it doesn't issue the TFN. That's going to come in the mail through the standard process. And we explain, like I said, all that in the document that you get. Now, there will be circumstances where as part of the lodgement, there may be different error messages. So there are a number of messages that we are identifying as part of our beta testing. So if you get an error message, what you will see is the fact that there is a particular error. You'll find out, or you'll be told what that error is, and then you'll be entitled to basically go back and amend that order to submit it again. Okay, so it is a process that you'd need to keep submitting, in essence, if these errors occur, but you can't, once it's successfully gone through, you can't resubmit it because, of course, you'll start to flag problems within the business registry itself. So there will be failed responses. So that would infer that you need to address something within the order itself, and we will tell you what that issue is. Or you're going to get a finished response, which indicates that it is a successful outcome, and then you will get that information sent to you thereafter. Now, one of the final things that we are doing on this particular page, and I might just go to the completed orders page whilst I explain this last bit. On the completed document, so once the ABN has been submitted and it is being done, we are then providing one last push back to Simple Fund 360, Class and SuperMate. So the ABN will be able to go back in and complete the setup of the file. We already have pushed to Simple Fund 360, push to Class, and just releasing our push to SuperMate. So that information naturally includes the fund, the members, the trustees, addresses, and so forth from your new fund establishment, versus this is now, once the ABN has been issued, it's going to allow you to push the ABN back as well. So we find that's kind of the end-to-end solution here when it comes to the ABN. And that last bit we see is important, just to make sure we're getting all that data and info back into your SMSF software. So if we go to the completed orders page here, what you can see is we have that apply for an ABN TFN. So that will simply bring across all of that information in respect to that particular order that was happening. So it is filling out as many of the fields that it knows and creating a new entry for you, allowing you to actually go through and do it. So I'm not going to put in all of the specifics there because that's an actual file that we were testing on. But you will be able to, as you could see there, that information simply moves across and then enables you to go through and fill out the rest that is unknown as part of that process. So let's go back to our slides, because I do want to now touch on a couple of other things in respect to this approach. So we have been toying around with where we put the pricing point in for payment with this. So what I should say is it does have a price attached to it. We've had conversations with clients, yes, you can go on the ABR and do it for free, but the feedback is this is miles ahead in terms of time. So the cost, which in essence we will be dispersing to the client, far outweighs the cost that would be incurred as part of this process. Now, for members, $33, for non-members, $55. It is going to be included in the payment of the order form. Okay, so like any other document, you could do this in essence standalone. If you ordered from some other provider or whatever, you could, or it didn't get done for some reason, you could go back at any point in time to do it. Okay, so we have deliberately decided to put this inside the actual ABN form. We were toying with putting it inside another form, so within the new SMSF form or the company form. Part of our rationale for that is a change that we have only decided to do in the past week or so, and that is that we are not going to proceed with a combined new SMSF and company form. I know many external providers do that. We've got some rationale for it because one of the things that we have found as hugely advantageous here as part of this workflow or doc flows that we're doing is that we are now going to, as you can see from the top of the right-hand side of the page here, we're going to start to build out a range of document flows. And in the context of a company order, once that company order has been completed, you can then do the next step of that document flow, which will be to create the new SMSF. So all the data that we have inside our company order will populate our new fund order that will then populate our ABN TFN order. So yes, there are 3 different forms, but the data that you will be doing in those forms is going to be no greater than if we had to put these into the combined forms. This is a marked change, and rationale for this change is simple. The document flow system that we're going to be building out here is then going to allow us to do a whole range of other things. So if you want to change trustees, but you then want to do a deed upgrade, rather than us trying to build out forms that combine these things together, we're going to build out workflows that in essence enable you to move data from forms to forms to forms to forms to forms. Pension reboots, you name it. So whatever those things are, we intend on through our own API that we have now, will give you scope to either create these strategy flows or potentially create your own workflows is where we'd like to get to in the future. And therefore, using that data to be able to swing around and save you time in that process. And the last thing there, of course, I touched on before, the fact that you'll be able to push this information, the ABN, once it's been successfully issued back into BGL class or SuperMate from that Actions tab. So from a timing point of view, our beta testing is pretty much complete. We are moving this into what is called live production post Anzac Day. I should note that we've already had questions. Can I do this for companies and trusts and so forth? The short answer is, at this point in time, no. This is only an ABN TFN for an SMSF at this point in time. We may look to open that up in the future, but it's not high on our priorities list at the moment. In saying that, though, we will be expanding into GST and PAYG registrations to, in essence, sort of tack on to the end of that process. So for those of you that would need that, you would need to do that independently of the ABN TFN at the moment. The process, as I said, starts currently from the Actions tab with a new SMSF, but we will add it as a generic option in the document list like we do with any other document. So importantly noting that if you do want to use it without the working through a new SMSF order on our site, then you're not going to get the integration benefit, but there's nothing stopping you from actually using that form if you wanted to. Feedback that we've got is estimated time savings in this process is 30 minutes plus already. So it's fantastic, the feedback that we've got. So thank you to our members that have been a part of this initial journey, and to everyone else, I implore you to, once you've got your new SMSFs up and running, to look at getting this utilised because, like I said, the feedback that we've had to date has been quite exceptional. So let's now move on to our next part, which is our SuperMate integration. And Again, this is something that we've been working on since sort of late last year, and we have now an initial release of data or documents to be able to order where you have a SuperMate integration yourself. So we've got our deed, upgrade, our investment strategy, new SMSF and pension documents. Feedback from our members that are SuperMate members, SuperMate users, I should say, is there was sort of 5 or 6 that are very commonly used, which is very consistent with the rest of our platform. So the experience that happens here for SuperMate users is pretty much identical to Simple Fund and Class users on our platform. So it requires the credentials of the SuperMate user to connect, and then it will allow you to actually order those documents. Now, phase 2 of this is going to have much more in it. So what I mean by that is it's going to enable things like single sign-on from within the actual SuperMate software itself, similar to what we do with BGL at the moment, but it is a fairly straightforward process here. What you'll do is you'll get access by connecting your SuperMate data. So you'll log in to SuperMate. It'll then authorize the token that will then enable you to choose the particular document and then complete that order. So we can see here, we can do a deed upgrade. We can choose the site that you have. You can then choose the client. And then once you've chosen your client, you can then import that data, and that will allow you to go through and in essence generate that document just like you do with any other document with the integrations that you have. And we've got the information that it knows within the software to be able to populate here. So fund name, reference, date the original fund was established, who the trustees are, addresses, so on and so forth. So pretty standard and straightforward in its application. Now, from the new SMSF point of view, what you will also be able to do is once you have created a new SMSF, again, you will be able to push that data in to enable that fund that we have here to then push it in and have it automatically set up inside SuperMate. So there are a number of what we call get and post entries. So we're either pulling data or we're pushing data back to our SMSF softwares, subject to the endpoints that allow us to undertake these things. So this is one area that we see is a huge time saver as part of that establishment process. So if we think about it as a concept, what is happening here is we are ordering our companies, we will create workflows to then create a new fund that'll create a workflow to do our ABN. Within that new SMSF and ABN process, we can then send that information back into SuperMate, Class or BGL, subject to the software that you use, saving time, saving errors in the re-input that might occur throughout that process as well. Okay, so I'm really excited about some of the development work that we'll be doing there with the SuperMate team in respect to those particular integration documents that we can incorporate into that process. So let's keep moving on. So like I said before, phase 2 will be a single sign-on like we do with BGL. So I've touched on previously an advancement that we've done with our pension commencement documents. So we have now included a TRIS and ABP that will allow you to start with unknown balances at the 1st of July each year. Okay, and I'll come back to some of that in a little bit more detail shortly. But one of the other things that we have recently and we are finalizing at the moment is we do also, within our pension documents, enable you to create templates based upon whether you are using the Smarter SMSF deed and therefore complying with Rule 25 of the Smarter SMSF deed, or whether you are using an alternate deed and therefore some of the functionality of our rules, the governing rules of the Smarter SMSF deed, are removed from those pension documents that would then be created. So in essence, we've got a generic set of pension documents, and then we've got our Smarter SMSF pension documents. One of the things that we've had requested, and we are working on this at the moment to have resolved in these new documents, is we're adding an optional rule or clause reference, or we're adding an option to have the rule or clause reference removed if you don't have access to that information. So we work with a number of administrators and other providers that deal with external relationships, so other accountants and other advisors and so forth, and they might not necessarily have that information immediately to hand. So what we're enabling that to do is the first question is this being completed in accordance with the Smarter SMSF deed, yes or no? If it's a no, do you know the rule in respect to this pension, yes or no? If it's no, then we'll create a generic reference in that document that the pension is being paid in accordance with the governing rules of the fund. But if it is known, then you will put in the relevant clause or rule in respect to the payment of that pension. Okay, so again, just little tweaks that we're doing in this process. The other thing, as I touched on before with the BGL integration, is that we are now getting more information populating the member components, the pension type, the reversionary details, and so on and so forth. And the API, if you have multiple pensions set up during the year for one member, for both members, you will be able to choose that member and then, or members, and import all of that through one import process. It may, if there are 5 pensions, it will import all 5 pensions, and then you'll work through those under your saved orders to then generate. So this API will give you access for multi-pension input to generate the documents that you want. So I'm going to go across again to our platform to show you a little bit more about this work that we've been doing. So first and foremost, I just need to connect to BGL. So we are currently building this within the BGL site here. So I can't show you right now. I've gone through and provided some feedback to our team about how it looks and what's being populated in here at the moment. But in essence, what we now have is a pension commencement form with our unknown balance. I'm just going to bring up a file here. And what you will see is you can select the year in which you're doing this particular file and then import. And what this is now looking for is it is now looking for the member in the year that has started a pension. So inside your software in BGL, it will notice that account-based pension 2 has been set up for the member here. So what I'm now doing is I'm clicking on that and importing the data. Now, for those of you that use Class, this functionality has been in existence for some time. So this is additional endpoints that we were able to get from BGL to enable us to go through and undertake this work that we needed to do. Okay, so this is an enhancement to our existing one. For our Class users, you've been able to do this already. And we're getting some extra work done by SuperMate to avail ourselves of this particular process as well. But what we're seeing as part of the generation of this document is that it is filling out now all of the information that we need and know from within our Simple Fund software. And it will allow for us, once it comes up, it will allow for us to see the components and then enable the decision-making that needs to happen thereafter. So let me just try to refresh that. If not, I might go to one we prepared earlier. So what I should say is it will also create that saved order. So I'm just going to go to saved. So we can see here. And then what we will do with that is you'll see in here that, and I'll just need to be fairly quick on some of this information. But it's populating all of the information in respect to that fund, about the member and about the trustee. And then what it's enabling us to do next is then give us details in the system about that particular pension as well. So what you can see on here is it being paid under the Smarter SMSF deed? If it is, then it's populating already Rule 25. But if it's not, we now ask you, do you know the specific rule? And if you don't know the specific rule, then we will create a generic result for you, versus if you do know, then we would like you to then put in that clause or rule to enable you to generate that. Our view, best practice, is you would always put that information in. We do get feedback that, if you can't find it, what should we do? So all we've done here is given you the option to choose an alternate approach. And we've built the template adjustment to give you a response based upon whether that is known or is not known in those circumstances. Okay, so you then just put in 28.9C, for example, and then away you go. But what's happening here is we've now got this information having come out of BGL. So the pension commencement date, which we didn't previously, the account name, which we didn't previously. One of the things that we've done with this pension document is you can now start it with unknown balances. In this instance, we're getting all the information out of BGL. So here we've got the pensions balances, the components, all of this is being populated for you. So here, are we linking it back to an initial request? So we may have done something on the 1st of July, maybe not. If not, no. And then you'll see in here, once we're starting with the entire account balance, it allows us to move on. So this two-step process, you can start pensions without the balance known. It will then create the saved order and enable you to go back to it once you then have completed the financial statements. You can see here the calculations done. You can also see here, if you select at least the minimum, you can make that election if you want to around how you might want to treat above minimum pension payment amounts. Do you have an accumulation account? Do you have just a pension account? So therefore, you're looking at the different priorities in terms of how that might occur and which priority you're ranking in respect to one over the other. So I might just go back to no there to hide that for now. And then your payment frequency, again, you've got those choices. And most importantly as well, inside the actual reversionary details, the information about the reversionary is coming over too. So you're getting the reversionary's name. You are also getting the fact that it is reversionary. You're getting the pensioner's relationship. And we are allowing you to then set up the relationship of the reversionary level, so percentage, dollar amount, or something to a transfer balance cap, which is another potential option there. So that is a fairly significant enhancement that we've seen within the BGL integration around pensions, but it is a significant enhancement to our pension documents as well. We see a lot of people from the 1st of July now looking to use these documents to start them with unknown balances. And therefore, we're not having to worry about the backdating of documents that we might regularly see, and where you do so from your SMSF software documents, you are in essence backdating because you are maybe preparing the accounts in October, November, December, whenever that is, and then those pensions you want to commence from the 1st of July. Well, this overcomes many of those issues, but as you can see as I work through this form, goes through many of the specific issues that set apart why pension documents like this are much better and much more comprehensive than what you get out of your SMSF software as well. So that just allows you to choose whatever that relevant percentage or dollar amount is. So let's go back to our slides again. So that really covers our account-based pensions and our TRISs and stuff generally. You can see a couple of things there. Like I said, we touched on that optional section for the rule or clause, the fact that there's a greater integration around the BGL work that we've done. And we are going through currently a refresh on our unlicensed accountant letters. So there are a number of ones that we have recently added for SuperStream, rollovers, contributions, planning, and so forth. And in the second half of this calendar year, we are going to be revising that model that we have for our Create Comply documents. We're going to actually bring that into our existing document subscriptions. So simplify our subscriptions, but we'll have more to say on that in the second half of this year when we launch those changes, and we'll explain what that means. The other thing here, we have recently made a number of additional documents. I did touch on some of this last time. I've left this in here just to, again, make you aware of these documents. We have run a particular session on this late in February, late February it was. There's a reference in these slides you can have a look at if you want to find out more about the document additions that we've made around our changes to trustees and directors and what we've got on our plate in respect to that as well. And the last thing I really want to touch on from what's been happening within the team is our SMSF Day has now moved into an online course. So we did have a couple of people on Monday this week saying, where's the link that I can log in to this live streamed event? It's not a live streamed event. It's literally an online course. So it is self-paced, enables you to work through many of the topics that both Tim and I presented at in our SMSF Day. So once we'd finished those events, Tim and I were straight back in front of the camera, creating an interactive learning that provides the 8 CPD hours that individuals that attended the face-to-face events got. So there are 4 modules. 3 of those have the associated case study of our Little Brewers Super Fund attached to it. You're doing all the activities that we did on the day. Then there's discussions in there from me and Tim about some of the answers as you work through those. So we've tried to make it as relevant as to those that attended the SMSF Day events face-to-face. And we do then have the pricing on there for our members and non-members if you want to look at accessing that as well. So I'll just quickly again jump across to the site to show you how and where this sits. So you can see on our learning platform, so you can go from one to the other. Then obviously in here we've got our training, so that will take you across to our learning platform, and subject to the levels of membership and access that you have, you can then go in and access our webinars, foundations course, SMSF Day, and so on and so forth. So we go into our SMSF Day online course, and then we have our modules and subjects in here in which you can access. So if I go into, say, session 2 here, what you will then see is our interactive online course. So it expands out. It is fully mobile responsive. So you can watch it in full screen. You can watch it on a mobile phone, on a tablet, however you want to do it. Most importantly, you have resources. So you can download our case study and our activities, which become a key feature, like I said, of modules 2, 3, and 4. So you'll see in here, we have our Little Brewers Super Fund that makes up our case study for those sessions and details, and then allows you to work through the activities that we have in here. And then, as I mentioned before, you will then, through this process, look at and listen to both Tim and myself as we go through those topics, give you the actual activity itself to work through. So you'll be able to stop at that point, and then actually, once you've completed or answered some of that, then you've got Tim and myself coming back and sharing our thoughts and some of the issues and topics that were relevant to that particular activity. Okay, so once you've gone through and then completed each of those relevant areas, so it's Tim or myself in certain areas and topics, and you've got other references and links to be able to work to, and we're putting the finishing touches on literally our comprehensive answer booklet that will then be added in here for you as we go through many of the topics that we cover right throughout each and all of these sessions. And most importantly, to be able to get your CPD, we then have our CPD assessment. Within each of the topics, you do have to answer 5 questions, 80% pass mark. You've got a couple of attempts to go through and complete that. So yeah, really excited about the release of this. We had, I think, 4.63 out of 5 was the score that we got from our SMSF Day events. So it's a fantastic way in which, if you weren't able to attend, that you can take advantage of the content that we had. Obviously, with our latest intel, we went into great depths in respect to the proposed earnings tax as one area for discussion. along with a range of other things, NALE consultation, electronic measures, and so forth as well. So there's plenty there for you to get your teeth stuck into if that is of interest for you and or your team. So let's now go back and kind of wrap up with a bit of information about our roadmap for the rest of this year. So as I said at the very beginning here, we're continuing to make some improvements around our user reporting and orders console. So I'll keep you up to date, I should say, throughout the year as we make advancements in respect to that user console functionality. And there is a lot that we're going to do. One of the other things that will really wrap up our new SMSF work that we're doing in the initial sense is now that we've finished our ABN and TFN, we are moving on to doing an integration with Macquarie Bank to enable the initiation of a cash management account. So our workflow that I spoke about before, again, is relevant here because it takes us from our company to our fund to our ABN to then enable us to do our Macquarie account, could enable us to do our investment strategy, and will allow us to keep moving in any other integrations that we see relevant in this place. So that is next cab off the rank for us in terms of integration work. And again, we'll have more to say on that in our next update. The doc flows therefore become central to what we do in not only the fund establishment, but right across the platform in a number of other documents that we were looking at combining forms together. So if you have any suggestions on forms that we bring together, that sort of thing, or things that we can connect the docs to, in essence, from a document point of view, please let us know. Pension reboots, so commutation and repurchase is a perfect one. Trust deed upgrades with deed upgrades, companies with bare trusts. They're all things that we can actually look to use our doc flows technology to enable us to fast track that ordering process. Now, whilst we're on the topic of documents, we are actually going through and doing a full document migration to a new version 2.0 platform. So once we've got that finalized, you will be able to toggle between those. I know if you're a class user at the moment, you will note that there is a similar sort of functionality available in there for the new console or the old console. So that sort of similar thing will apply here. My next project that I'm sticking my teeth into to get resolved is our deed platform. So that is going to enable you to manage deeds, track your deeds through an automated upgrade process, deal with bulk upgrades with us if you need to get uploaded and have sort of other oversight in respect to that as well. And that deed platform will become actually a much more broader than the deeds itself to track and manage the history of the activity that is happening at a fund level and then a member level. So we're thinking then about pensions and DBNs and that sort of stuff. We're going to continue to expand our existing document suite, of course, many more documents on our list to get through. If we had an unlimited amount of time and money, then it'd be a very different story. But finally, we are then looking at masterclasses. The topic is being finalised at the moment. But in essence, given that we're travelling around Australia for the BGL RegTech events in August, we are going to set up some half-day masterclasses looking at pensions, or it might be subject to what happens out of the budget. We'll have a look at a range of things as a masterclass, and again, get on the road to support you and your training that you might need in the area of SMSFs. So that's it from me. We do have a number of events coming up each and every month. So just keep yourself up to date. Go to our smartersmsf.com/events page, and you'll see what's coming up, what you can register for, including our SMSF webinar with the federal budget, which we know this year is going to have a little bit more in it than we've seen in previous years. If you want to find out more about our SMSF Day online course, we're going to be running a session dedicated to that in a lot more detail early in May. And our 18 May one is one of our largest paid webinars of the year SMSF tax planning, where we take a look at all the strategies, tips, and traps that you need to be aware of with your clients before the 30th of June. So as you can see, that's why we run these sessions. There's plenty happening within the team. Thank you once again for joining me. If you've got any other questions, please feel free to ask them now. Other than that, I'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us. Take care and bye for now.